appointed a council under John's direction because the technology industry and the ecosystem surrounding it is growing very rapidly. But there's a real concern that we've got to be intentional about ensuring diversity. And that's diversity in every sense of the term, because the mayor in particular is concerned that we're really looking out to develop and preserve leadership opportunities and job opportunities, and that those are reaching all Chicagoans, not just a very select few who happen to be starting companies, for example. And so over the course of 6 months, we worked to imagine what it would take. Yes. We worked to imagine what it would take to, as you can read with me as I read aloud, increase the percentage of minority employees for technology firms, increase the percentage of minority-owned and operated technology firms, and really to think about how do we create a pipeline through which Chicago Public School and City College of Chicago students can transition into the technology economy. That was the mandate, and it was a pretty broad mandate. And the committee embraced this really with a deep sincerity and wish to try to really understand what was already happening in Chicago, who was doing work that we could learn from, and what the obstacles were. So one of the things that we immediately did when the committee came together was start to brainstorm all the stakeholders and people who were not necessarily on the council, but who really could help inform this process. And so we developed a list of more than 100 people, all of whom were interviewed in depth, to get their sense of what do you think the issues are, what are the opportunities, what should the city be investing in. And I think one of the things that became apparent very quickly was whether we were talking to community organizers who were looking at gentrification issues, to people who were leading quickly growing and very successful startup and technology companies. There were a number of themes that were coming up over and over for them. And one of them is that exposure to technology and technology access is sparse, and people felt this was a really acute issue. It wasn't clear where to send people for training. If you wanted to get started, where should you go? And if you actually needed, on the community organization side, if you needed technology support, it wasn't exactly clear how you could get that in an affordable way. The acute need for role models and mentorship. This came up, and I think it's something that all of us in this room in particular can relate to. The issue about having a role model or mentorship came up when we were talking whether it was about middle school students to try to see themselves, see their background, see their life represented as a possible job, to people who were mid-stage careers wanting to have mentorship and wishing that their companies would actually have a kind of intentional growth plan and retention plan for them. So that issue of mentorship and role models came up in a lot of ways. Information is hard to come by. When we sat down to try to just get, one of the things we said was, so what's diversity actually like in these companies that already exist? Baseline data is hard to come by, but it's also hard for a high school student to know where to go to find out what programs are available. So that was kind of at every turn. There were people, you could find a person. We had a wonderful representative from Chicago Public Schools who could tell us what was going on, but the reason she knew was because she was interacting with a lot of people. There isn't like a place you can go to just know what's happening with technology. Through it all, we had people extremely excited, people who run companies who want to host interns, people who want to find ways to develop training materials that they could share, people who have model programs that they think could be useful for others. And I think as we go through the recommendations, which I'm going to turn over to Neil in just a second, I think that is as representative as the people in this room. You know, you came out tonight for some reason. There's a lot of interest by the community writ large in seeing something happen and being part of it. Next. So as we worked through these themes and we started to look at the incredible diversity of programming and activities that are happening, one of the things that the committee started to feel strongly was that this effort, a technology diversity effort for the city, could not be about a Christmas tree of lots of shiny programs. That the community involved really had to be thinking about the way in which we needed to create and support an ecosystem. That, you know, having a great retention program for leaders was not going to be enough if you didn't also have an on-ramp for students who are maybe in under-resourced schools to get their hands on technology and become fluent with it. So we developed this framework, it says GEEK, a word you probably know. And as we went to work in committees, we broke out under these headings. You know, what is it going to take to get people involved and get the basic skills that they need? As they're developing those skills, how do we equip them to take the next step, to understand the pathways to get certified? How do we actually empower city colleges and Chicago public schools to become producers of hireable talent? How do we not only employ our own, but keep the ones that we have here? I think that issue is quite acute for a number of the faces I see in this room. And how are we going to do that in a coherent manner? So that vision was really what was driving most of the work. And we broke out into teams and people worked, and then we came together and we synthesized and mushed it all together. The other part that John was going to say, but didn't say, is that the work of the Tech Diversity Council is being integrated into an overall city plan. And one of the things that we felt strongly about was that we didn't just want to have a little section that was like diversity. What we really wanted was to have the overall vision and the commitment to really shifting the status quo of sparse resources and not very many different kinds of people involved, that should really be integrated into the overall plan. And so when the plan comes out, the kinds of things you're going to hear tonight are actually integrated throughout that plan, but this is a chance for us to highlight specifically what's come out of the Tech Diversity Council and answer a question.